Hi, this is Robert Rapier, and this is R Squared Energy TV. Got questions this week about the Keystone XL pipeline and the development of the oil sands in Canada, as well as President Obama and gas prices. So the first question, can you do an episode on the Canadian oil sands and the Keystone XL pipeline? I'm specifically curious about the Indian carbon impact of the process. And then there's a follow-up. So on that bit, a few years ago, there were some numbers floating around that the energy return on energy invested for the oil sands was about 3 to 1. So about 1 BTU of natural gas going in to produce 3 BTUs of oil and ship it down the pipeline. Now, that's not very good. I mean, conventional oil is probably above 10 for the most part. And when you get down a 3 to 1 range, it makes it very marginally economical unless you're taking something that is very cheap, like maybe stranded natural gas, and then you are producing something that's worth more, like oil. But what the energy return on energy invested tells you is that as it's falling, the emissions profile goes higher and higher. You're producing more CO2 to produce the same amount of oil. But in fact, I've seen industry sources, I've seen in multiple different places, actual inputs and outputs from this process, and it's really about 8 to 1. So you input about 1 BTU of natural gas to get 8 BTUs of oil flowing down the pipeline. So that is a more realistic, from my view, energy return on energy invested. It's still less than conventional crude oil, but it's not so low that the emissions are totally out of the ordinary. They're a little higher than normal, and some life cycle analysis studies have actually shown this. The emissions are higher; they're not extremely higher. So this follow-up is, if China imports the tar sands, are their refining standards the same as those in the USA? Will there be more emissions, pollutions created by shipping the oil to China and having it refined there versus Houston? Yeah, in fact, China produces a fraction of the GDP that we produce for the same amount of carbon emissions. So it's very likely they will produce more emissions refining that there than if we refined it in the U.S. It's also true that shipping it there will produce more emissions than shipping it down the pipeline. So there are more emissions in both counts. Opponents of the pipeline think that they are going to block it from going to China. By blocking it from coming into the U.S., they think that there will be enough opposition to a pipeline to connect it to China that that won't happen. Now, I think Canada has shown all indications they're going to continue to grow their oil sands production, and I think they will, if we tried to keep it out of the U.S., they will search for other markets, and they'll eventually get a pipeline and get it out somewhere else. But the fact is, most of that is coming into the U.S., and even without the Keystone pipeline, it's coming in by truck and it's coming in by rail, and that will continue to grow if the pipeline is blocked. So, and those are more emission-intensive ways to get it in. So, I think whether they realize it or not, opponents are probably creating more carbon emissions by trying to keep it out. I mean, their idealistic case is they can slow down development, but if they don't slow down development, if you see 5 years from now development continued at the pace that it continued at, you can say probably the emissions from that are higher because they blocked the pipeline. Now, I don't think the pipeline will ultimately be blocked. I think it'll eventually be approved. And a lot of people ask me, how can you support renewable energy and support the pipeline? And so I came up with a thought experiment. For somebody who's an advocate of renewable energy, if you ask them, do you support current oil production, what we're doing currently with oil production, the activities, they may say no, but then you say, would you support having them shut down today? I think most reasonable people would say no, because if that happened, people will start to die as food stop moving around the world. So then I think the answer becomes, I support phasing that out as quickly as possible. And so that's pretty consistent with my viewpoint. I support getting us off of oil in a timely manner, but also making sure that we have oil supplies as we do this in case the renewables can't ramp up and replace what we need to have replaced. So that's my reason for supporting both. I want to have a supply of oil in case the renewables cannot deliver, as we scale up and try to deliver the renewables. So, it's not a matter of trying to block or shove aside renewables. It's just a matter of an insurance policy. On the other hand, I do not believe that the oil sands are going to, the Keystone pipeline will significantly impact upon prices in the U.S. I think that regardless, it'll get to the market one way or another, and so it'll be, maybe as it's if it takes more money to get it to China, overall prices may be a slightly higher, but there's not going to be a major impact. You're not going to see gasoline prices falling to $2.50 a gallon because we got the Keystone pipeline into the U.S. I think there'll be scarcely any change at all. And it may be true that a lot of that is exported. The oil may go to a refinery in Texas. It may be exported then, maybe exported back to Canada as gasoline. That's surely a possibility. But the biggest thing for me is it's an insurance policy for a future in which we're dealing with oil shortages and problems because oil is depleting. So, second question about gas prices. How can you continue to say that Obama is not responsible for high gas prices? Um, he's the president. He has run up the debt, and that has weakened our currency and so forth. So, that's a different issue. My issue is Obama hasn't done anything to restrict supplies while he's in office. He may be doing things now that restrict supplies that could have come online in 5 years. But the nature of these projects are that it takes a long enough time that he can't really impact upon prices, in the short term. And if you think he can, think about this. Do you give him credit for the low natural gas prices? And you probably don't. Do you give him credit for the higher oil production and natural gas production that we're seeing? And again, you probably don't. So if you're not going to give him credit for that, why would you blame him for high gas prices? In fact, he doesn't control any of those things. And Obama himself is trying to claim credit. He's saying my administration has seen the largest oil production in years and years, and then try to deflect blame for gas prices. He's also trying to have it both ways. He wants to, he's not responsible for high gas prices, but they're responsible for the high oil production. They're not responsible for any of it. They're not responsible for the high oil production. They're not responsible for high gas prices. In a few years, we can look back and we can evaluate Obama's energy policies. We can debate them now and say he will have an impact upon gas prices in the future because he either restricted supply or, his renewable initiatives worked and oil prices are low because we don't need oil anymore. So, but that we're going to have history. We're going to have a few years to be able to look back and determine that. So with that, that's about it for this week. So if you want to tune in next week, I'll see you then. Thank you.